Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we have Richard Katz, author of Indigenous Healing Psychology, honoring the wisdom of the first people. Please hold up the book.
Oh, here we go. Yep.
Woo! And can you center it so we can see the beautiful cover?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a story about. It's really beautiful. Tell me the story of
I'll
the
tell
cover.
you the story about the cover. I'll sort of give you some of the details.
Okay.
When you do a book on indigenous knowledge or indigenous people, there's a tendency to think that there's a way that indigenous people look.
Mm-hmm.
Certain stereotypes. You got to have feathers. You got to, the whole thing.
Mm,
And I was kind of very clear that I didn't want that because I don't want it to be dramatically catchy or, oh, wow, look at that. I wanted it simple
mm-hmm.
and something that would be universal.
Mm.
And so we went through a few covers. I want to tell all the authors out there, you do have some right to pick your cover. The publishers usually say that's their prerogative. You know that.
Yeah.
See it as a marketing thing. But what I wanted to market, I'll hold it up again. I wanted to market something that's accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
It's
have to be
beautiful.
indigenous to read this book. It talks about human values. And so I wanted it to be open to everybody.
Hmm.
That's why the cover is very much non-denominational. Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so I find your story very fascinating. You started at Harvard University. You're a professor there in clinical psychology. You said you did that for how many years? 20,
I
30?
was there for 20 years,
20
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So how did you move from Harvard as a professor to working with indigenous elders and
Well,
healers?
yeah, this is kind of it's both a long story and a short one. When I got to Harvard, I met a lot of these kind of famous people like Skinner, B.F. Skinner,
Yeah.
and Maslow. He was not at Harvard, but he was close by. Erik Erikson, psychologists out there will know these people. Huh?
Yeah, I know all those people.
Yeah, good.
These are like, huh? I'm not a psychologist, but B.F. Skinner, I remember reading in an intro book to
Yeah,
psychology. It's the uh it's the response stimulus, that kind
yeah,
of person,
exactly.
right?
Behaviorism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
I came there, and I was interested. You know, to be a psychologist, I wanted to help people. What a naive thing. And I came to Harvard and found that clinical psychology, the last thing that it really did was try to help people.
oh,
What they tried to teach me there was how to prove by research that clinical interventions didn't work. So here I am looking for how to help
that they
people
didn't work or did
that
work?
they didn't work.
Oh,
That was their mission. So at
oh.
Harvard there wasn't very much. And then all of a sudden, you know who appeared? Leary and Alpert. Remember that? The
Timothy
psychedelic.
Leary, yeah, the one who's doing mushrooms, or what
That's right.
psychedelic drug was he doing?
All of them, psilocybin, LSD, and all that. This was in the 60s when it was legal.
Yeah.
That opened the door at Harvard. It didn't open my door because I had other experiences, but at Harvard, it changed the whole Harvard experience so that you could see that there was more than what mainstream psychology offered.
Hmm.
And then in 1968, remember where 1968 was? That's a long time ago.
Hmm.
Went to the Kalahari Desert and worked with the Kalahari Bushmen,
Hmm.
the Jinkwasi, who are hunter-gatherers.
Hmm.
And that said to me, I saw their healing dance, participated in the healing dance, and saw a healing community at work. And that changed my life forever.
Tell me, do you remember what the vision? Can you tell me what your first experience is? Do you remember?
Oh,
I know
yeah,
it's
of
1968.
course. Remember totally. 1968, that wasn't so far ago. A little more than 50 years. I went to the first healing dance, and people were joking and having wonderful time, helping each other. Ecstasy, agony. It was just quite an experience. And I was thinking to myself, now, wait a minute. If this is a healing event, people should be very serious. They should.
Where are their
So,
books?
huh?
Where
Yeah.
are their books and their notepads?
You know, the whole, you go to church, you have to kind of look
Yeah.
like you're praying. And these
Uh,
people were ecstatic.
mm,
And I remember thinking to myself, what's going on here? They were joking,
mm,
laughing with each other, helping each other. And then what I saw was that spirituality and healing is not a solemn, like we have to stand and pray. It's like
mm.
everyday life, and it's joy, and it's like complaining. Huh? So
Right.
it's all of it. It's all of it.
Right.
And that changed my life forever.
Hmm.
And from that point on, for the next 50 years, I've been working with different indigenous communities all over the world, trying to understand what they're offering. And they've told me, the elders, go back and do something with psychology, with the social services, with the human services, with healing in your culture.
Mm-hmm.
See if you can make a difference. And
Hmm.
that's what the book is about.
So you spent
Yeah.
after you said you spent 50 years working with,
Not totally, over a 50-year period.
over 50 year. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went from the Bushmen to tell me where, like, tell me all the different places you've
After
gone.
that, after I came back from the Kalahari, the next place I went to was Fiji,
Mm, wow.
Fiji Islands in the South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also worked quite a bit at the Rosebud Reservation, the Lakota Reservation in South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And then also went to up in Saskatchewan, well, first Alaska,
Right.
Athabascan people in Alaska, and then came to Saskatchewan with Anishinaabe and Cree people.
Mm,
And in between it's in India for a bit and things like that. So it's in different parts of the world, and that's what the book is really about. Talking about the teachings from different parts of the world. But the most important thing, could I call you CJ? What
yeah.
should
Yeah. CJ.
the most important thing about the book is that it tries to talk about what it is that we have to do to earn that knowledge.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times you see around you people who are teaching, so-called teaching indigenous knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
non-indigenous people very often.
Yes.
That's not how it goes.
Hmm.
You have to be given in a ceremony, very kind of carefully, given permission to talk about these things. And then what I try to do is I never offer these teachings as my teachings. These are not my teachings.
Hmm.
I'm a conduit. I'm a messenger.
Hmm.
If people really want to learn what's happening, they have to go to these teachers. My job is only to bring these teachings into contact with health and healing in the West.
Hmm.
And then giving people an idea what they have to do to earn those teachings. You see, if you ever meet a teacher, an indigenous teacher, that charges for the teachings, my feeling is it's the wrong teacher.
Right. So there's all these shamans of which
Absolutely.
okay.
That's
Okay. And so as a shaman, like and there's some wonderful shamans like Sandra Ingerman, Michael Harner has a whole institute that's based on that. I don't know if you ever ran into him during your
no, I
discoveries.
know him way back when he was a graduate student.
Okay, because he was at Berkeley going and traveling in the same circles, but in different, probably it sounds like different areas that you were in.
Yeah.
So, so and I know I've taken classes in shamanism, and they do talk about like you're not supposed to receive money, but at the same time you have to make a living. So this is the challenge.
This is the challenge. This is what happens, okay? Traditionally, like historically, these healers would be looked after by their community.
Right.
They would be fed, they would be clothed, they would be taken care of because
Yeah, like sponsors. They have sponsors.
healing work takes a lot of effort and energy.
Yeah.
So nowadays, what I do is if I work with somebody, I'll always give them a gift.
Mm.
You understand?
Mm.
And the gift is money. I can't give them a horse. I can't give them a gun.
Right.
You see?
Yes.
I give them what they need to survive, but I give it as a gift, not as a fee.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So I'll tell you a story. So I was at Rosebud with one of the persons I talk about in the book, Joe Eagle Elk.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a healing ceremony. I requested it. And at the end of the ceremony, you make certain gifts to the people who helped you.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned to my friend who was my introduction to the community and said, what should I give him? Meaning how much, eh?
Yeah.
Well, whatever you say, This is whatever you say. But give me an idea. He said, well, such and so it was, I think, $100 or something. Mm-hmm. The second ceremony I had a year later, at the end of the ceremony, I reached into my pocket and emptied my pocket. I have no idea to this day how much was in there. But you see the difference?
Yes.
I gave from the heart.
You gave from the heart, right? Not from the head, like what's logical, what's the norm here. It's like
Now, here's
Yeah,
another thing. Okay, so
yeah.
with the humble nature, the vision quest, which I talk about in the book, at the end of the vision quest, you come back to the community to tell your story. Now, the interesting thing is, from a Western point of view, you go to the vision quest to gain spiritual power.
Uh-huh.
No, no. From an indigenous point of view, what I was taught, you go to the vision quest to learn how to better serve your community.
Oh, that's a huge
Big
difference.
difference.
That is
Big.
a huge difference because they all talk about being powered up, getting
That's right.
energetic power, and it's, yeah.
If I could say one thing to people listening, look for the people who see their ceremonies as a way to increase your ability to help others.
Mm.
This is not a climbing the spiritual ladder.
Hmm. Well, I think most of the shamans I've met are there sincerely to help people,
That's right.
but they do so at the impoverishment of themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of them, honestly. So it's like you got to make money, and if you ask someone to give you a gift in the U.S., that's not a kind of standard part of the community. So it's hard. But I don't want to go too deep into this. I want to go into how you said that if you're in the community, you had to earn the right to be a teacher. You had to be given permission. So, because these are sacred teachings. So,
Absolutely.
so how were you given permission, and how does someone earn the right to be a shaman in a community, a real healing doctor within it? I shouldn't say real healing doctor because I think shamans in the U.S. they're healers, but maybe not in a traditional indigenous sense.
Yeah.
So, how does one get selected to become a healer?
Well, see, CJ, this is the thing. I do not offer myself, and I've never done that as a healer shaman. I'm a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
I've done healing things on the, I do it as part of what I do as a psychologist. So I'm not in a tradition of one of these cultures, and I make that very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be that, you have to just give up so much, work so hard, dedicate yourself so totally. And that's not my way. I have a family. I'm part of this world. Eh?
Right.
So what I'm doing is opening the door.
But how were they given permission to even open the door?
Very clearly, we would like you with words. We would like you. Now, I'll tell you the story. Okay, so I
Okay.
wrote this book called The Straight Path of the Spirit about Fiji, and I brought the book back to the person I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
Is this book going to be okay? What do you think of it? Are your teachings being expressed properly? You know what he said to me? He said, "Look, if you've been here for 3 years and you still don't know what's going on, write anything you want because it'll be nonsense anyway."
Oh, okay.
He knew that I knew. And then he said also, "Look, my job was to teach you. Your job is to write books."
Wow.
That's the permission. Your job is to write books.
Wow.
Believe you know enough so that anything you write, it's okay with me.
Okay.
That's one form, you see?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, another one is specific. Could you go back to your people and teach them the things I'm teaching you? Another kind of permission.
And how is is it shaman or shaman?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, for the person who's the healer in the community, how are they selected?
Okay, that's a whole different thing. Now, for example, Joe Eagle Elk, Lakota, his father and his grandfather were healers. And he had a vision which he tried to reject because if you become a shaman or a healer, your life is no longer your own. If people call for help, what happens? You go. So the shaman typically, or the healer, does not seek the healing power. It comes to them.
And how does it come to them?
Well, oftentimes in a dream or a vision, or sometimes a relative will give them the teachings. So in the Kalahari, people learn to become healers from early on. Half of the men are healers.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. This is a community healing thing. That's when I was there. I saw that communities can become healing as opposed to repressive,
Interesting.
So, and in Fiji, the tradition of healing often comes in a vision. So I'll tell you a story. This guy had a vision to become a healer, a real vision. And he said to the spirits when they were talking to him, I don't think I can do this. I don't have any idea how to do the ceremonies. And in the vision, he was told, don't worry about how to do the ceremonies. We've picked you because of your character and who you are. You'll learn the ceremonies along the way. You see what I'm saying? The main thing was they picked him because of who he was as a person.
So no one really wants to have this dream, like you said. No one's like, I'm just going to make it up because I would really like to have all these secret teachings.
TJ, stay away from them.
Right. It's something that you're kind of like, I don't really want, because it's funny because I've had so many dreams of which people tell me you're a healer. And I was like, no, thanks. I'm not going to do it. And so I see it.
You have to give up your life, you see.
I
now,
know.
we give up our lives in different ways.
Yeah.
I'm talking about giving. I'm talking about if I call you, like you're in Seattle now, right? If I call you, here I am in Saskatchewan, you get in your car and you come. Then that's the obligation.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to be a healer. No offense,
right.
Richard. Not that I don't want to help you.
yeah. But you see, CJ, the other thing is you probably, with your show, are doing the healing work. You understand the difference?
Yeah, that's what I've rationalized in my head. I'm doing enough, even though I'm given this gift. And I don't know. I actually have done in these shamanic classes, just weird stuff has happened that I don't even understand. And I do have some talent, but I have no interest in doing hands-on healing and calling in spirits. But I think people who do, it's great.
It's very complicated because there are people out there who are looking for that kind of person and want to pay for it, you see? And then you get into a whole thing that's not related to healing.
Yeah.
Much better to work in different media, whether it be a radio show, a book, or just talking with people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I do. I'm a coach. So like you,
I
talk to people.
I'm a Canadian citizen, a U.S. citizen. So I come across the border, and of course the U.S. is very uptight, even about Canadians.
Even though you have dual citizenship?
Yeah, that's right. So I come across, and there's a border, the border, and this guy comes, and I come up to him, and he says, "Where are you going?" Very brusque, Richard. "I'm going to a conference." "What kind of conference?" "Well, psychology." That's how he's talking to me. "And?" "Well, it's about psychology and healing." "Yeah, and?" And then he changes. "Can I tell you something?" He says, "This is a true story. Can I tell you something?" "Yeah." And he begins to tell me his dreams. A guy who's working the DJ. "Can I tell you my dream?" I said, "Sure."
All the people behind you are like,
But you see, the point is that I'm making is I wasn't a healer. I was just open to the healing exchange that we all have.
Yeah.
And at the end of our conversation, what did we do?
Don't know. Hugged?
We hugged.
Oh.
CJ, we hugged.
That's sweet. That's very sweet.
I'm saying it's an everyday thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sweet. I can't tell you how often I'm just sitting there and people just tell me their stories.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I think that there must be something about me that's kind of like, please go on and on about your stories.
I'll tell you a story about that. Okay, so one of the things in the book we talk about is how to do good therapy, how to do good counseling. Okay, so I had an elder come to my class of psychologists who were trained in cognitive behavioral and da-da-da-da-da. And the elder said, the key to counseling, traditional counseling, is listening. Listening. Okay. So later she left, and one of the students said to me, "Yeah, but isn't that what Carl Rogers says? We have to listen? Isn't that one of the important things in counseling?" I said, "Yes, that's what he said." But what Elder Mary Lee said was not that listening is an important ingredient in counseling, but listening is counseling. Mm-hmm. Listening is counseling. So we're all healers. Mm-hmm. And listen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If we listen. Now, I'll tell you something else. One of my kids, I've got lots of kids, not lots, 4. She would call me when she was in a period at university and beyond. "What do you think of this? What should I do? What do you think? I've got these 2 alternatives. Should I do this? Should I do that?" And of course, as any good father would, I fell right into the trap, trying to solve her problem. And what was I not doing? Not listening.
Oh, the guilty is charged.
Absolutely. See, what psychology, mainstream psychology, wants to do, and this is the book talks about this, is to fix people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the problem with that? If your job is to fix people, you have to find what.
Problems.
That's right.
Mm.
And if there's no problem that's presented, you create it.
Right. Oh,
So
yeah, you're a problem
that's
creature
called
because that's
DSM,
that's your
Diagnostic
job.
Symptom Manual, right?
I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. So I have a question for you. You
Okay.
you studied psychology. You
Yeah.
spent another part, double the amount or more studying shamanism or indigenous culture and that form of healing. So you pointed to one difference, which is kind of that listening is just healing. But what
Mhm.
are some of the other differences in that? If you talk to a psychologist today, what would be some of the
Yeah.
insights that you had and from your experiences working with the indigenous culture?
I have to tell you one thing, CJ, that's been wonderful is the book has been adopted by some clinical counseling community psychology classes.
Oh, great.
So we have people who are going to be exposed. And I'll tell you some of the things they're going to see, okay? The one thing is healing therapy, if it's effective, comes from where? The spirits.
Oh, I would say the heart.
Well, yeah, but what's in the heart?
Well, your
It's not
connection to
just your
spirit.
heart. It's the spiritual. It's spiritual
Yeah, connecting
health.
to spirit. Yeah.
So the good therapist doesn't talk about how strong they are, how powerful they are. It talks about how open they are to the powers that are around that are healing.
Mm.
Understand? So you
Mm-hmm.
don't take credit for, but you do try to perfect your craft. So if you're a cognitive behavioral therapist, do that well, but appreciate the fact that there's a healing force
That's running through you.
that's running through you. Exactly, running through you. So that's one thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is spirituality, if it's the core, is not this great big, Maslow was kind of like a little bit off on that. He thought about peak experiences. No, it's everyday appreciation. I look outside, I'm looking at my window right here. I see snow. Where does snow come from? The Creator. It's all from the Creator.
Mm.
It's part of like this force. And as therapists, we tap into that. Now, I don't want to sound, it's not mystical, it's practical.
Hmm.
We don't take credit for healing because we're only part of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we find out is the importance of stories. If I'm going to be a good counselor or therapist, I've got to listen to the story that's being told to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I look for, CJ, is it accurate? Like, did they get right the number of people that spoke to them or how many jobs? Is it true?
You mean
And
for their spirit or their soul?
just the story,
Okay.
just the life story. It's not, let me check points of accuracy. Did it really happen?
Oh, okay.
Is it a truthful story? Because our stories change.
Mm.
So another thing that psychologists have to learn is to listen to our stories. The good cognitive behavioral therapist doesn't just come in and do her thing. She listens to where the client is.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
And then she puts her techniques. So the other thing the book says is you don't have to give up anything. You can just add things. So here's a story. So like Danny Muskwa, who's one of the guys I work with very close. His great-grandfather was on the reserve when the church first came. This is up here in Saskatchewan. Mm-hmm. And a priest came, interested in the sweat lodge, but said, I don't know what to do, though, because I was told the sweat lodge is evil, and I don't want to lose my ability as a priest, because that was the teaching. Mm-hmm. His great-grandfather said to him, look, come into the sweat. Nothing to be afraid of. You'll come into the sweat as a priest, and you'll leave the sweat as a priest. Mm-hmm. I think you'll be a better priest when you left. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the teachings are not to give up what you're doing, cognitive, behavioral, existential, whatever, but add another element that will make for a better healing.
I see. So you're thinking about best practices
That's right.
that
This is
you've noticed from the indigenous folks, and you're bringing it back to clinical psychologists.
there you go. Exactly. You want to write a blurb for the book? Well,
Sure.
that's it. And
That's it.
that's why it's been so gratifying to see students who are learning to be psychologists and counselors and marriage counselors looking at the book, because it gives them that extra important dimension. It's not me, and I can bring spiritual energy in, and that makes me a better therapist. Counselor.
Do you think that they have to know what the spiritual energy is that they're channeling?
Not at all. No, just feel it.
Okay.
I don't spend, in the book, I don't spend time defining what's spiritual, what it looks like. Something beyond, CJ, something beyond, something we can't put into a package or a neat box. I walk outside and sometimes the wind is the spirit. I look at a person in a store, it's a smile, and I'll say, boy, that smile is nice, thank you. And then the smile gets bigger. That's a spiritual contact. See?
So I want to go back to two different things. So you said Maslow's had it wrong. So I only know Maslow. I didn't even meet Maslow. You've met him. But I know the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And then the actualization and that. And I don't remember what he said about peak experiences. So what did he have wrong? I mean, tell me, go back.
Well, this is the problem. Okay, the first thing is that hierarchy of needs. You see, from an indigenous perspective, what I've been told is there's no hierarchy. For example, a medicine wheel has emotional, physical, cognitive, and spiritual. They're all equally important. So it's not a hierarchy. Secondly, so it's a circle, not a hierarchy. Second, at the top, Maslow thought there was only a few people that could reach that self-actualization. The teachings that the indigenous people have given to me to pass on is we're all spiritual creatures. We're all part of the spirit. There's no one that's denied, you see. So it's not the 1%, it's everybody. Not everybody is that way and open to it, but we're all part of the creation. Okay?
Okay.
And the third thing is, in terms of peak experience, it's not a peak experience as much as an everyday experience.
Well, making everyday experiences peak experiences.
Abe Maslow was into going into the nature and getting, a high, going to a symphony, getting a high, the highs. He later talked about what he called a plateau experience, which was carrying those highs throughout one's day. But the teaching I've gotten, and I want to pass on in the book, is it's everyday spirituality. Simple things, little things.
Yeah. Yeah, like the water, like the fact that I can drink clean water out of this cup.
Drink water, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly the point. And how many times do we have to connect? I'm not saying, 100 times, but here you just connected. There's water there.
Right.
You probably maybe know in your own life experience the times when you had no water.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And there you know what it means, you see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's what you had said in the very beginning, that when you went and you changed your mind about the clinical psychology that you had at Harvard, and you thought, this is actually about a spiritual experience. What does that mean, a spiritual experience? From your perspective, what does that mean? Because you said you're not trying to get people like, oh, it's spirituality, and then people are like, psychology, spirituality, a Westerner would kind of, So how would you explain it to a Westerner so they don't freak out?
Well, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what psychology and most Western disciplines freak out.
Yeah.
But if we talk about people relating to each other in a core way, if we talk about walking, I do a lot of walking up here, and feeling the breeze and listening to the birds. Like I have a little grandson that I'm helping to raise. We have a whole story now about what happens in the spring. What happens in the spring? Trees that have had nothing start to have leaves, and then start to have buds, and then start to have flowers, and then have fruit maybe. This is like incredible. If you think of it in terms of our life story, this is the spiritual dimension. That's the teaching, as opposed to something that's, we better be careful because it'll knock us off our feet and we won't be able to function. it's right into functioning. You
Right.
see,
You're saying that the spirit is all around us. It's in the
that's
plants
right.
and the trees. It's not like,
And
oh, are
people,
you talking about Mother Mary and,
that's right. Exactly.
Buddha, Jesus, all this stuff,
Yeah.
which people
Now
may have issues with?
that helps at certain points. Now, for example, here we have a lot of things like sweat lodge.
Hmm.
That's one of the teachings they do. The sweat lodge changes people not because of the sweat lodge, but because it opens the door to spiritual help.
Hmm.
Ceremony itself is not the be all and end all. It's the beginning.
Hmm.
Oh, there's something out there, and then
Hmm.
on from there.
So what do you think about nowadays? There are, it used to be the indigenous culture, the first people who use mushrooms and things that were kind of which was kind of the closest thing to LSD. And now people are using all sorts of psychedelics.
Ayahuasca and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen those. And I was just talking to a friend of mine who's in hospice, and she was telling me that people who are in hospice who fear dying, when they take magic mushrooms and they have a journey, that they come back feeling more calm because they now know that there's life after life. They don't die when they die. It's just a continuum from one thing to another. And so I thought, wow, that's interesting. So do you think that those rituals that are part of indigenous cultures could be applied in a Western setting?
Well, this idea of the continuity of life, you see, I don't know.
Or maybe
Think of
just think like a psychological setting.
yeah.
Let's go to death because that's
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
gigantic
I
topic.
mean, with that whole topic, let me just say this: anybody that talks about what happens after we die, I don't listen to very much. What do they know? Have you ever met anyone that's died and come back?
I've just met mediums who say that they have
But you
communicated
know
with
what
the
I'm
dead.
saying?
But I don't know if what
I
they're
have
saying is
respect
true.
for that, but I don't listen very much because I don't know, and they don't really know.
Wait, no, these are people who are in hospice, who are alive, that take a
Yeah,
journey and feel
yeah,
like they went to a different plane of reality. And in that
ab-
plane of reality, they're like, well, wait a second, there is a plane of reality outside
yeah.
this physical realm.
Well,
That's
that's
all.
what happened to us 50 years ago at Harvard.
Yeah, when you took, so you were taking them too. Okay, so what did
Yeah.
you,
Oh, yeah. It's exact. I mean, there is a reality that's real behind the reality that we're partly real here.
hmm
Okay, right? I think though,
hmm
but most of the time we're not. I did a lot of work with the Gurdjieff teachings.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know them, but I know
I mean,
of them.
we're asleep 99% of the time. And every once in a while we wake up. What do we wake up to? Reality.
Hmm
Wake up to reality. Here we are, you and I, right?
hmm
This moment we're here, right? Okay.
hmm
And then we're not, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was the experience that we had 50 years ago. And I firmly believe that that's what those psychedelic substances do.
And do they
It,
have a role in psychology?
absolutely, yeah. But with the people who know what they're doing.
So who are the people, you mean the people in the indigenous culture that have been
Absolutely.
using as a ritual for,
Absolutely. And
okay.
this is what I do, for example. If I'm working with an indigenous client, I might say, would you want to go to a sweat? CJ, I don't run the sweat. I go to people whose ceremony it is, and we may go together. If
Mm.
I'm going to work with psychedelics, which I don't, I would find people who are doing it the right way.
Right. But how do you know? I mean, I've seen
This
so
is,
many things out there where it's like, oh, supposedly this guy is from
I,
Peru or
I know, I know,
Colombia. I don't know.
I know, and they have a whole lineage thing, and he worked with so and so, and he worked with so and so, and he
He's
worked with so and
legit,
so.
like, I don't know.
I know. Well, look, I talk about this in the book
Hmm
at length because
hmm
how do I pick the elders I work with?
Yeah.
You know what happens? Part of it, I like the people I worked with.
hmm
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to like them.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
level of reality. I enjoy being in their company. And then you know what I always do? I ask around.
Yeah.
Not just other shamans, but people in the community.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I think if most
Because
people ask their
everybody's
friends, yeah, who don't
everybody's
know
got
anything.
if they're earning their living from it, they've created a story which is to sell.
Mm.
And I try to dig deeper and find out, but you're not always right.
Right. Yeah.
If I see a big fee, I don't follow through.
Right. Because you're like, must not be legit. Because they.
I mean, like, please, this is not a way to make thousands of dollars.
Hmm.
Now, do you have to go to Peru or Ecuador? Not necessarily, but it might help.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So,
know what I'm saying?
no, I know. I mean, because that's where the people who really understand the knowledge of the plants, how to extract the plants, how to get the essence of the plant, understand the nature of the plant medicine. But if you're just like, in LA on an ayahuasca party,
it's too easy. It's too easy.
Well, I don't know. I shouldn't dismiss it because I know a lot of. I actually even have a friend who was a guide in one of and doing these psychedelics, and he said it's so moving. I mean, if you have the right guide.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, here you were in Harvard doing the same thing, right? I mean, you were there with your dear friends who I'm sure were like guiding you so that you weren't having a bad trip.
And listen, we thought we knew what we were doing, and we only partially knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. So well, what did you think you were doing, and what did you now realize you didn't know?
We thought we were on the classic spiritual journey of the ages. We thought we were part of this long line of spiritual explorers. And at times we were. You know something, though? At other times we were just having a good time. And that's okay.
Right.
DJ, that's okay.
Right.
Nobody should ever think it has to be pure 100% every time.
And in what way were you a spiritual explorer? You look back and go, I explore by doing what? What were you doing?
Seeing that the world, I had countless experiences of the world dissolving as I knew it and other realities coming in.
Okay.
So what you talk about with these people at hospice, we had that all the time. But what I'm saying is that was not the only thing. We also were sometimes having a good time.
Right. Yeah. Some spiritual, not so spiritual.
That's right. That's right. But it was powerful.
Right. Okay. So what? So you're coming to Seattle, and are you going to be talking to psychologists?
Well, I've got two things, CJ? One of which is a public lecture on, I think it's the 8th. Is that a Friday? Yeah.
Yeah, on March 8th, you're coming to the Seattle University.
Yeah.
And then you're doing a keynote on March 9th at Seattle University.
Yeah, the keynote on Saturday is mainly for people who are doing counseling, psychology, marriage counseling. It's going to be more professional people. Mm-hmm. The Friday night is a public lecture, open to anybody. Mm-hmm. So anybody that's interested in healing, in spirituality, in growth, in indigenous cultures, they should come.
And what are you going to be talking about during?
I haven't decided yet. Some of the things we're talking about.
Okay.
And the book will be available there.
Right.
And book signing and so forth.
Yeah.
And let me mention, please, that the royalties from the sale of the book go back to the people.
That's great.
Whose teachings made the book possible. So people can feel very good about purchasing the book. And I feel totally good about promoting it because it's for a good cause.
Yeah. That's great.
Are you going to be there?
March 9th, I don't know. I could be.
I'm teasing. No,
okay. Well, why not? I'm in Seattle. So what? So you don't know yet what the content is, but I know that I want to answer I want to go through some of these other questions that we discussed before. So, in terms of respecting and honoring the teachings, what did you mean by that? Like, how can we respect and honor these teachings?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I always want to be sure I mention that. We have to remember that indigenous teachings, almost all of them, come from a context of socioeconomic stress. These elders that I work with, at least, they don't have any money. The racism, the oppression, the cultural oppression is there. So they've earned these teachings. They've paid for them with their lives. So we can't, as a non-indigenous, just say, "Oh, let me do that. Let me try that." the earning is, first of all, not just saying, oh, let's go turn on here, and you have to maybe go to the place, okay? Maybe that's one thing. But most important, you have to respect the fact that you have to give something back. And I try this thing with royalties. Support indigenous causes. Support indigenous sovereignty. Respect the fact that these people are coming from a condition where there is no money. You know, some I hear about sweats that have nice carpets on them and so forth. The sweat lodge I go to is right on the ground. You understand?
Yeah, like with dirt.
It's not a pretty, it's so nice. It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
You see, so we have to appreciate that the teachings have been earned through pain and suffering. They're not just fruits that we pick.
Yeah, so I don't complain if there's not someone who gives you a spritzer after you're done with your
Right. We have to realize that we have to support the causes, the economic causes,
right.
the political causes of indigenous people who are struggling to maintain some dignity and some control over their own resources. That's part of the deal.
Right. So part of it is if I read something in your book that looks appealing, the next step is go to, you know, go to the Bushmen, go to Alaska, go to Fiji, and I'll tell. Does the book tell you specifically where to go, or should they contact you to get a sense of where to go?
They can contact me because I've got a couple of people already. You know.
Okay. I'm interested in learning more about Fiji. That really impressed me, and so you'd say yes, go to Fiji. Here's the person. Get the direct experience and knowledge. And you need to get permission to use this, right? I mean, they can't go and like, I now have a 10-step process that I'll go use with my clients.
Yeah. One of the things that I do when the book is used for people who are learning to be counselors, I tell them the main thing you have to remember is you are not an expert. Okay? Because if you're a mainstream psychologist or counselors and you go through a course in indigenous counseling, you can come out and say, now I know about it. No, you don't.
Can't I say I'm a certificate, indigenous culture certificate?
All you know is how to be a better person. You see, so that's important because otherwise it's appropriation.
Right. But I think that happens so often.
All the time.
So often. I mean, and it's not just an indigenous culture. I mean, people take Buddhist stuff and then they're like, 10-step process to reduce stress. I'm like, I think that's Buddhism. Like, what are you like?
That's right. All the time it happens.
Okay. Okay, so I think we talked about psychologists and what they can do to work with their clients, what some tips that they can learn. And then the other was what you said, what are some of the indigenous teachings about health and healing? So respect, compassion, exchange, balance. And did we cover that, or should we talk a little bit more? Yeah.
Balance.
Yeah.
Western approach is curing. Get rid of things, mostly symptoms.
Problems.
Indigenous approach, it's balance. Now, you know what they call teeter-totter? You know, okay. Yeah. A teeter-totter is fun when the person on the other side is about the same weight. Because you never know which way it's going to go.
Right.
From an indigenous perspective, what I've been taught is that health and healing is a question of balance, not cure. As soon as I feel imbalance, CJ, guess what happens? Imbalance. Did you ever see an ocean have only low tides?
Right.
Only high tides? That's the nature of our existence. As soon as we're in balance, imbalance comes. Balance. Imbalance. You see? So the aim is balance, and balance is healing.
That's interesting because I think that in the Western view, there's a perfected state. You know, I am at the top of my health, right? And like, oh, my back hurt. And you're like, no, I'm not healthy anymore. You know, you have this kind of thing. And it's like, well, okay. And then I tend my back and now my knee hurts, you know, so there's this constant, it's like, I guess what you're saying is
Exactly. It just the ebb and flow.
This is life.
It's ebb and flow. And so balance as a measure of healing, it's very difficult for a Western mind that looks for results and results that stay. If I say to someone, this is going to be really helpful, but a couple of months from now, you're going to have to go in and get a readjustment.
Right.
We don't like that.
No, I paid you good money, Richard. I thought
That's,
this was going to be done.
that's right. So that's an important teaching.
Right.
It's an
Yeah.
important teaching.
Yeah. Well, in the
And
last couple of minutes, I want to hear about your. Or were you done? I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, you're
Okay.
carry on.
I wanted to hear your first experience getting an indigenous healing and how it compared to, I'm sure, because I know I have a lot of friends that are psychologists. I guess I'm lucky or unlucky. I don't know. I just have a lot of friends that are psychologists. And all of them have had to go through a rigor of psychology on their own. So I know that you've probably gone through similarly a lot of psychology and healing. You went and got an indigenous healing. How would you compare and contrast the two experiences on your own personal sense?
Well, from an indigenous point of view, the experiences I've had are almost never cognitive.
Wow. Okay.
It's not a question of figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
And from a Western point of view, a lot of the therapies, even the body therapies, it's figuring things out.
Yeah.
Where does it come from? Where is the body holding?
Yeah, like if my back hurts, it's like tune into your body. Where's your body holding it? It's in the left hip or the right hip. Yeah, that kind of thing.
From an indigenous point of view, the therapy is to connect with the spirits. The spiritual energy that's all around us. And then that's the opening, that's the beginning, that's the power. Then you do the other work, the cognitive work, the emotional work, the physical work. But without that beginning, it doesn't happen.
I see. So you call through your spiritual helpers to, okay,
That's
let's say
right.
that CJ has a problem on the left side of her back. So as a spiritual, you would actually call in the spirit helpers to like
That's
connect with my back. And then you said you would go through the emotional. How would an indigenous person talk about my spirit?
Well, for example,
and
when I
health?
was in Alaska, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I worked with what they call tribal doctors.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are very skilled in terms of massage and feeling the organs, highly technical, highly skilled, but they start all of their work with what? A prayer. Creator, please help me so that my hands can become healing hands. It's not a lack of technique. Hey, CJ, they're highly skilled. They know the body. They always begin with a, please, I pray that my hands can become healing hands. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then do their technique. This is what I'm saying. Like if you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, that's fantastic. Great. But start with a prayer that your cognitive behavioral therapy can become a healing vehicle.
Oh, I like that.
It will
That's
become more
nice.
powerful.
Yes. So you start with spirit
You
first.
start with prayer. Now, a lot of times people who work with their hands or with clients, they'll go one client after another.
Yeah.
You have to stop and pray, and you have to clean yourself. You understand?
Yeah.
You see one client, you have to wash your hands, either literally or metaphorically, to
Right.
get ready for the next client.
Right. To clean the palate, so
That's
to
right.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are other some? I know we talked about a whole bunch of practices, but I find them fascinating because I'm also a life coach, so I'm going to integrate everything I just learned.
Well, there's a lot in the book about practices.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So you're coming to Seattle, and you will let spirit guide you in terms of exactly what you're going to be doing.
What I do when I first start, CJ,
Yeah.
I just take a moment, just like you did before you were on air, to connect. And then I try to have an idea what I'm going to say first, but I don't really know. And once I start, that's the beginning. But it's got to be connected.
So it's sort of like a channeling, or is it like a?
You have to connect to who's there. You have to look around. You know what I'm saying? Even
I
with
do.
100 people, you know that.
I
You
do
have
know.
You can't just run in and start.
Well, I'm glad that you remind me because tomorrow I will have, I
You
don't
have
know,
to do
100,
that.
500 people.
That's right. But
And
listen, PJ,
yeah.
you'll take a millisecond even, or a couple of seconds. You'll breathe a couple of times, and then you'll be there. And then you start.
You know what I have? So here's what I have upstairs, and here's what I do something that's kind of like you, but not exactly. I'll have a set of questions that I will be asking, And everyone knows what the set of questions are, potential directions that we're going to go. And then when the time comes, I just let whatever lead me, lead me. Is that how you go? So do you
See, you know what the important thing is in any kind of talk or presentation?
Yeah.
Important thing is not content, but communication.
Yeah.
You can have a beautiful talk with all these wonderful points that are logical, that so forth. But if you don't communicate to people, it's worthless. Mm-hmm. Much more important, think about communication. Who are you talking to? What do they want to hear? What do I want to say? And then the content is secondary. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, it's just a waste of time. Nobody's remember anything because they're not connected.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. No matter how beautiful your content is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you're reading, it's almost the same thing with a book. If you can't connect to your reader, what's the point of writing the book?
Yeah. All right. So you'll be coming on March 8th and March 9th. And you will be giving a customized presentation based on exactly who shows up. How's that for marketing?
That's very good. I like that. Customized, yeah.
Guess what? I was in marketing. Okay, previous to doing this radio show. Okay, so tell me how people can buy the book and how they can find out more about
something, CJ. Like I said, I don't have a website, but if they go to Inner Traditions or Amazon.
Okay.
It's on Amazon.
Hold up the book so we can see what it looks like, dude. The beautiful cover.
So,
Indigenous Healing Psychology, Honoring the Wisdom of the First People.
Right.
Richard Katz. Thank you so much for your time.
Good care. And I'm so glad we had a chance to talk. Okay?
Me too.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.